welcome to Viewpoint, that vaunted talk show which is known throughout from Schenectady to Santa Monica. We've got a special guest in this morning, and we have a special co-host. You viewers will note that the scene to my right is dropped a little bit now. We have a substitute for Mrs. Busby, who was not able to be with us this morning, and we will introduce the gentleman in just a second. Dan and Carol, we always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo or two. Something goes on in the community, organizations or individuals, and I would like to note that Lincoln College recently had first place in the front page of the Pantograph, and a nice article having to do with our expansion programs. We're now offering 4-year as well as 2-year programs in many of the disciplines, and it was a nice piece of bit of PR, and so I proudly take my hat off to the Pantograph for promoting Lincoln College a little bit. Did you see it, Dan?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
It was a great article.
Yes, it was. Nice, good. And I'd like to call attention to the fact that last weekend, a lot of folks had their lives put on hold for a minute while they answered a rather disastrous fire over in Latham. Volunteer fire departments came from everywhere. Just everywhere. And, it's not only giving up the time and going to be on site to help fight the fire, with rural fire equipment, no hydrants or anything, of course. Then when they go home, folks, they just don't go home and have supper or dinner or breakfast, as the case may be. There's a lot of work that has to go on with putting everything back in place in these fire engines and the firehouses. A lot of cleanup. So kudos to those folks. Let's get around to some serious business. Judy Busby's replacement, he's on trial now. We're going to see how he works out. He's not been around the community very much, so we want to work with him, folks. He's also a noted author. I don't think he's ready yet for Pulitzer. He's not up there with Dostoevsky or Ernest Hemingway, but he's a doggone good writer. Danny Tackett, my friend that I call Fiddler, and we're glad to have you with us, Danny, this morning, and I appreciate your sitting in.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. If I may, start right off by correcting you. I think
Again,
you used something I believe is a substitute for Judy and a replacement, a fill-in. There is no such thing when it comes to Judy.
That's a nice thing. That's a nice thing.
She is,
you're right.
A very special lady, contributed a lot to the community, this radio station, and no, I'm flattered that you say that, but I decline.
Well, I appreciate your mentioning that. She's a joy to work with. She makes a great neighbor. Brings over nice soups and pastries once in a while to Mrs. Gossett and I. We appreciate that very much. All right, now speaking of such matters of neighborly, nothing is so neighborly as a person who produces produce out of the garden and probably shares it with her neighbors. We have Carol Mills with us today, and we're going to talk about a subject matter that's near and dear to her heart, gardening. Which fills in with Fiddler here because he's quite a gardener of note himself, by the way. Carol, tell us why we have you here this morning, because you have a special project coming up here, and we'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Okay, we're going to have on March 11th what we call the Russell Allen Garden Day. Mm-hmm. And it is a morning of educational programs sponsored by the Master Gardeners here in Logan County in honor of Russell Allen, who was one of our original charter members of our group, who has passed away. And in his honor, we hold this. We've had this since 2008.
Russell was a neat gentleman. I really appreciated knowing Russell. Yeah. He happened to be a customer of mine many years back. But more and above that, he was a consummate gentleman. And I understand he left a little sum of money for you to kind of help propagate this.
In 2008, and at the time, actually the first Garden Day was in 2012. We'd had a garden walk with different gardens featured around town. In years prior to that, and we were having some difficulty finding homeowners who wanted to have that much traffic through their yards. So we were looking for another fundraiser, but not really so much that as a way to make contact with the population of the county. And the goal of the Master Gardeners program is to educate. That's our primary goal. And so this was a way we thought we could help educate people in the community about gardening.
Now, are you emphasizing both fields of gardening, that is flower gardens and produce gardens?
Actually, it's even wider than that.
I didn't know it could get wider.
It is wider than that. There are gardeners who only do roses. There are gardeners who only do daylilies. There are gardeners who only do vegetables. There are gardeners who limit their gardening to their lawns.
I only do planting.
I only do things that I can eat.
Well, so we've tried to vary our programs. Last year, I think that there was an interest, and we collect a survey at the end of the program to see what people would like to and try to give them what they want. And so we had a program presented by the Spirited Republic on home brewing of beer. And that seems pretty far away from gardening, but
I missed you, Jim. I looked for you there.
But some of the ingredients used in beer actually can be grown. Hops can be grown in your own yard. So
right. My son in Nashville, Tennessee, has a couple of hops plants, and then I have a friend who lives north of Springfield, who has an acre-plus hops yard. He grows it commercially. So
we try to vary it. This year's programs, we have one called Wildflowers of Elkhart Hill.
Yes.
Lots of people like wildflowers.
That's a nice.
And it's beautiful. And I think this will be many slides, so people will actually get to see the flowers. And then another program that we offer, and people get to choose two. So there's 2 sessions in the morning out of 6 choices. So the other one is how local food can change Logan County, and that will feature Katie Bishop of Prairie Earth and Nicole Cox, who's the coordinator for the farmers market that the hospital sponsors.
Which is really a nice thing to have. That got off to, I think it got off to a good start last year, and I think most of us are looking forward to, well, we're all looking forward to spring, but to see that come back home again to the fairgrounds. I think
it's a nice asset.
Actually, didn't that market win a Chamber of Commerce award?
I'm not sure about that, but
past weekend.
Yes, it did.
Probably should have.
Yes, which bring other kudos. Those folks that were designated, there were several that received some recognition. One, I just kind of like to step aside and put on the academic road again. Eric Grunder, professor of ours at Lincoln College. It's nice to see him get that. He's one of the well-respected guys up there.
Right.
Yeah. I make it a point to just kind of digress just a minute. When I'm on the campus, I make it a point to interchange with the students to talk to them and visit with them. And inevitably, I'll ask, who are some of your favorite instructors? Not surprisingly, Eric's number comes up. So let's get back to gardening.
I'm going to give some kudos to Lincoln College, too, because they let us use their Meyer Evans Student Center for when we have our garden day, because the students are all on break now. At that time, we'll be on break, so it's empty. And they let us use their facility there at no charge. So that's how we're able to keep
community
the cost of the program down. It's $10 for the sessions, and that's a pretty good deal, because a lot of garden shows around here are $50 or more.
Right.
So it's a pretty good deal. And if you just decide that morning you want to go, it's only $2 more at the door. So
that's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
Now, I noticed on your program here, you have several, for instance, square foot gardening.
That entices
That's
me.
an intriguing title.
That's a concept. Actually, several years ago, my children gave me the book, and I haven't read it yet because I'm a little slow on reading, but, once it's spring, I'm outside. But the concept is that you divide a plot into square feet, and you grow so many plants in that square foot area, and then when those plants are done, you rotate another crop in. And so it really maximizes how much you can produce in, and they tell you in the book specifically how many cabbage plants you should have in this square foot. And I think there's a little bit of companion planning going on with that. Like I said, I haven't really read the book, but my general understanding is that the point is to maximize your land.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times they'll do it in a raised bed, and they'll be subdivided off into actual 1 foot square boxes. So
this becomes an art.
Yes.
It really does. For those folks that get immersed into that and really get involved. Well, for instance, I heard off air, I heard you and Fiddler talking about gardens, and we've known by Danny's writings and so forth that he's an avid gardener and feeds himself pretty well, by the way. And you know, he studied it. Some people come naturally. It'd be hard for me to grow a green bean, period. And you were talking about the various strains of beans out there off air, and that's pretty esoteric stuff.
Well, we all have to eat, so
we do.
You know, it's
and you know, one of the you say I've studied it. One of the greatest studying resources are these modern day seed catalogs. They include so much information anymore.
Yeah, and the production of them is truly an art form. I mean, the color reproductions and the writings and so forth. Somebody goes, well, it's come a long way since I read my grandmother's books out there.
Well, you can learn a lot from the seed catalogs.
Oh, sure.
You know, anymore they're going online, so not as many come in January and February as used to come in your mail. But you still, if you write and want a catalog, they'll send you one.
And they keep sending it. I think this week I've gotten my third different version of Burpee's spring seed catalog.
Now, there's a name I recognize from way back.
Yeah. How about Shumway? Shumway seeds.
Oh, that was Arthur Shumway. I remember him.
Yes.
He came from up around Starved Rock, Illinois.
That is true. And the seed company, I believe, is still located there. I wrote in my column 3 weeks ago that the Shumway catalog is still
coming.
My favorite seed catalog to look at because it looks like it was produced in 1890. Oh. All black and white, all woodcuts. You know, it's a marvelous little publication.
Well, if you get on their mailing list, you will have no end to.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Now I note with this device I'm holding in front of me, that would be an iPad.
I've never had one of those in the garden, Bill.
Well, you won't get any gardening done. The reason I mention that is that I would certainly imagine that the Internet, the availability of information out there, has markedly changed the way people garden.
I think so, because you can get information so readily. I did prepared a program on germination of seeds, and there is a variety of ways that they call it breaking dormancy. You could take a seed and it could lay on the desktop forever and it would never grow.
Exactly.
Because the conditions aren't right to, and actually it simply mostly means to break into the shell coating.
Right.
But there are some plants that have to actually be exposed to the heat of a prairie fire.
Right.
You're taking notes, Jim.
The grass prairies would catch on fire in years. I mean, we keep those a little more controlled now, but they would just spread for miles and miles, and that's nature's way of helping some of the seeds to germinate. So what a fire does, and you'll see the fires where the farmers are burning off some of their lands.
Right.
That wipes out the annual weeds that have come up early. The fire kills them, and then it allows the prairie seed,
the natural seed,
to
propagate.
Propagate, and it's a marvel. You can't help but marvel at the quirks of nature. But had prairie plants in past programs and speakers on that. So there's a wide variety of interests. Like
Well, tell us the history of our Master Gardener program, Carol.
I am in my 14th year, and I was in the second class. So I would say probably in Logan County, the Master Gardeners have been in existence for maybe 16, 17 years. They don't have a class every year. It's an University of Illinois Extension program, like I said before, whose purpose is to educate people.
Sure.
We offer a class not every year. They usually need to get a certain number of people in order to make it worth the time and trouble to do the program. And several years ago, with the budget cuts in the state, the counties were merged into at least generally a 3-county group, and we're grouped with Menard, which includes Decatur, Sangamon, which includes Springfield, and then Logan County. And so they offer a Master Gardener training program for those 3 counties, and it's a 10-week, I think, session, and I think it works out to about a 60-hour class that they offer. It's once a week, all day long, from 9 to 4, and you go and you have lectures on all the different components of gardening.
Sure.
Soils, lawns, trees, herbaceous plants, which are the things that die off every year, and then the woody plants that are the perennials.
Right.
And I took the class because I thought, oh, Carol, you know so much about gardening. This will just... What I found out when I took the class is how much I didn't know, and how much there was still to learn.
Sure.
And you're tested with their open book tests, and I wouldn't even begin to say I know a thimbleful about lawns. I mean, I took the class, I answered the questions, but that's not my area of interest. But there are some areas that I'm very interested in, and so you tend to pursue those.
Right.
We have an area of interest here at WLCN, and that area covers sponsors, because they're very important to us. Without them, we won't be on the air. So let's go right ahead, Mr. Ash, when you're ready, sir. And right back live in the studio here at WLCN. The program's a Viewpoint, of course, appearing every Wednesday morning, 8:15 to 9 o'clock. The co-host this morning is Mr. Dan Tackett. We appreciate your presence very much, Mr. Tackett.
Thank you,
and
Bill.
You can call him Fiddler when you see him on the street. It'll be okay with him. And Carol Mills, we're discussing gardening, a subject about which I know absolutely zilch. So I'm glad to have Dan with us, because he has a lot of expertise in the background. We were mentioning the Master Gardeners Club and the formation of that. You may or may not know this, Carol. But I'm certain that my dear friend Walt Ebel was one of the early participants in the Master Gardener program. We've not had Walt with us for many years now, unfortunately. But when Walt did something, he went full bore. And he was pretty much involved in this. So that's the forerunner. I think he was one of the originators of this.
Yeah, I think that we've lost several of the Master Gardeners. And, many people...
Well, that's going to happen every day,
Yeah. Well, many people think, it's because it's run during the week, during the daytime hours, that if you work a Monday through Friday job, it makes it very difficult to attend it. So we have a lot of retirees. I was able to do it because I worked a 24/7 kind of job. That meant I got a day off during the week.
Sure.
And so, but we're in the older echelon of population.
Want me to tell you about that?
The good and the bad and the ugly there, right, Bill?
So we have a lot of enthusiasm, and we're not necessarily always able to carry it out. But
right.
I know,
how many members do you have?
I should have checked that, but I'm thinking, maybe there's 35, 40 of us.
Well, that's pretty good.
When you take the program, and there's a cost to it. It runs about $200, and when you after you complete the program, you're not a Master Gardener yet. You're a Master Gardener apprentice, I guess would be the right term. You're required. Or what?
Or wannabe.
Or a wannabe. You're required to donate. It's a volunteer program.
Right.
The purpose is for us to put back into the community. And you're required to donate in the first 2 years 60 hours of sweat equity, so to speak, or 30 a year after that. But in the first, they give you 2 years to complete the 60, and then you become a true master gardener. If you complete your time in 1 year, then you start your official designation, get your name tag.
Right. But that's an annual requirement.
That's
correct?
an annual requirement,
Right.
as well as 10 hours of continuing education.
Boy, that's the Eagle rank in scouting.
That is.
Well,
So how do you get your continuing education in this?
we have a meeting every month, and there's generally a program, and sometimes we tap into other experts in the community that maybe aren't master gardeners.
Right.
Somebody might come and talk on orchids or bonsai plants, or then there's a lot of talent within the group, and so somebody will talk on their specialty. So usually it's about an hour's worth. So that if you attended every session, you could probably do it.
Okay.
But there's other programs such as what we're doing, and we're all involved in running this, but you have the ability to stand in the back of the room for one of the sessions if you're not busy with other duties.
Right.
So you can pick up another hour of credit. So
Sure.
there's programs that the extension offers called telenets.
Right,
and
I'm
you can
familiar with
do them
those.
on a computer, or you can actually go to the extension office. Just yesterday there was one on house plants. So, I don't really grow house plants very well, although I have some nice specimens. I'm kind of a brown thumb when it comes to many of them. But it's nice to know things, even if it's not your special area of interest. So
Exactly.
we have herbs that people like to grow, and one of the programs at the Garden Day session will be on the healing power of herbs, and Amy Wertheim, who's from up here in Atlanta, is
Right.
going to. She has made salves and liniments using herbs that are used for.
And she's going to be featured on this program.
And she's going to be one of the session leaders, and so you could go and hear about that if that's of interest to you. And then Rick Hornbaker from Hornbaker's Gardens, they have their specialty is hydrangeas. So
Okay.
he's going to talk on the care and pruning of hydrangeas, the kinds of hydrangeas. So it should be a very interesting, diverse program, because there you have the flowers, you have the gardening, vegetables, and then Grace Wibben and I are going to teach a session on making a stepping stone. We have discovered people like to go home with something extra.
Right.
And in years past, we've done hanging or potted container plants.
Right.
We did a fairy garden one year, and knee pagans from up near Bloomington have been done a couple of programs. They bring all the supplies. Those programs cost a little extra,
Sure.
because of the supplies, but then you get to take something home. So Grace and I decided to tackle that ourselves. So we're going to make stepping stones and show people how to decorate them, and then they'll be able to take it home with them and put it in their own garden. So
That's cool. I have 3 younger grandchildren in Nashville, Tennessee. And for Christmas this year, I found this little educational catalog of gifts for kids, and I actually got each one of them a stepping stone kit. And
put their handprints in.
they can decorate it. The kit came with indelible markers, so you could paint them. You could do anything.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Russell Allen would be a bit unhappy to see how his interest in gardening has blossomed, and this Russell Allen Garden Day, he's smiling from ear to ear. Let me tell you that. He was such a quiet gentleman. I just really admired him, and I just knew that he had an interest, and that's all I knew. And found out that he's kind of propagated a major sideline for a lot of people.
Some of the gardeners that knew Russell personally said he just put his heart and soul in the program. He didn't just.
Russell was a studious man, by the way.
Yeah.
He was a very bright boy.
Yeah, and he, as he got older, it got more difficult for him to actually do some of the physical things, and so he became the photographer for the group. So we have, pictures that were taken of the projects that we did. I mentioned the garden walk. When we did garden walks, there weren't as many. Now there's multiple garden walks, so it gets more. The competition is stiffer.
Sure.
And so we haven't done that since 2012 when we started this program. But we also do some of the fair beds at the fairgrounds.
I was going to ask you about that. Kudos upon kudos. Those flower beds around the fairgrounds are just beautiful.
They have turned out very nicely, and every year we have to kind of take an essay of whether we have enough physical strength to do what we do, because there's a degree of physical labor involved.
Oh, sure.
But we really kind of enjoy sprucing up, and Ace Hardware is
beautiful.
And those of us who remember the first year of the Logan County Fair, the new Logan County Fair, you'll recall there was one up around Atlanta.
The Atlanta Fair,
in the old days.
The great Atlanta Fair.
Right? I think Jim was there then, Jim. But those of us who remember them, by the way, one memory, Dan, of the opening harness races out there at the fairgrounds, we had a horse drop dead on the north turn.
38?
No, 37, I believe.
Okay.
I think I'm correct in that. Anyway, don't hold me to that. But we've watched that fairground develop, and you folks are just doing a wonderful job in enhancing the area out there. And it's just nice to see. As Dan says, kudos to y'all for doing that.
Yeah, we think they look. We're kind of proud of that.
As you should be.
And someone said, well, if we don't have enough help, maybe we should decide which ones we're going to do and stop doing the others. And I said, you don't really understand. The people that are doing these particular beds, they've taken ownership of these beds. And they don't want to leave these beds. They want to keep doing these beds. So, it's a lot of fun, and then, we water them to keep them looking good.
And this is the way for you to meet different people in your community, too, Carol.
It is.
How long have you been back here in Lincoln with us?
We moved here in '83, so that's what.
She's almost a newcomer, Jim.
Yeah, I know. Right after we moved, I talked to another PTA type mother, and she said, "Oh, we're new here in Lincoln," and we had just moved here. And I said, "Oh, did you?" She said, "Well, we've been here 3 years." I thought, "Oh, that just was the first peek at what being a Lincolnite means. You have to have your roots in the soil,
right?
Otherwise, you're a transplant."
Yeah.
Well, the nice part about your organization is that you exchange ideas and you get new information, and each spring you can try something new.
That's true, and I think the joy in gardening is to have an idea and then see it come to fruition. But sometimes it's a dead-end road, and something doesn't work out well, and you learn from that, and you try something different the next year. So.
Would you say the greater interest is in one or the other, flower gardening or produce gardening? Kind of a split?
I think there's an awful lot of people who dabble in both sides.
Right.
I think in our group, there's probably 2 or 3 people that really like house plants.
Right.
Not much more than that. There's a few people that really are into roses. I would say most people do some amount of vegetable gardening.
Right.
But we have such diversity. We have people who start their own seeds. We have other people who just go and buy one tomato plant at the store and put it in a pot on their patio. So the interesting part is that there's such diversity in what people are interested in. So
now, when you in the spring, when it comes time to looking for seeds and plants and so forth, do you find that the quote box stores are a good source, or Do you have any recommendations as to where you'd find the seeds and the products that you're looking for?
For the last several years, Ace Hardware has helped us with the plants.
I ought to give them a kudo.
We buy our plants from them and for the fairground beds. They also are very helpful when we do the Russell Allen Garden Day, because they loan us a lot of the decorative items that we decorate displays during the garden day, and so they have been very helpful. And I, by that standard, like to shop locally, and you get to know what plants do well. If, say, a big box store plants, there's a technique that they use in the horticulture field merchandising, in which plants are sprayed with a growth retardant that keeps them small in the selling situation, so that they don't have to keep feeding and watering and have them grow out of the pots, so that they stay small until they go home with someone.
I think my daddy sprayed me with that.
It doesn't always wear off very well, and so your plant will just sit there all summer long, little, and not really take off and grow. You get to know plants that don't do well from this concern or that concern, and you shop somewhere else. So, some places don't use growth retardants at all, and those will be the plants that look a little crowded in their pot, but they're actually going to do quite well when you put them in the ground. So it's just a trial and error.
When it comes to plants, I'm a seed starter myself on tomatoes, mainly because the variety of tomatoes I really like. But you can't hardly find the plants
plants, Now, my favorite tomato is the Celebrity. Celebrity is a hybrid, and hybrid plants don't grow true. I mean, I could collect seeds from my Celebrity plants this year. They wouldn't grow Celebrity tomatoes next year. So, but Celebrity's fairly common. And I'm sure there's another tomato that I would like just as well. I just have never.
Have you tried Brandywine, which is an heirloom?
That's an heirloom, and isn't it a bigger tomato?
It's a bigger tomato.
Why don't you not step outside and smoke, Jim?
For my taste, it is the best tasting.
And generally, the heirlooms are considered to be better tasting than many of the newer tomatoes, in part because the hybrids were bred for specific reasons. They bred them so that they could ship them from California to Illinois and not have them arrive mushy. So they may not be very tasty when they get here, because that part that went with the DNA that they bred out of that plant. So that's why a lot of people like the heirlooms, because they're considered to be a better tasting. They're also probably uglier because we're a very eye appeal shopper. So if you're looking in the store for a tomato, you're gonna, or an orange, oranges that are green in spot. Oranges are not, they've been treated. I mean, because they grow on the tree with a little bit of green on them, but that's not as pretty. So, it's a trade-off, and marketing is what we get in the store is what they perceive as the better sellers. But if you grow in your garden, man, there's nothing like the thought that I picked this 5 minutes ago. It was growing on the bush, and I'm eating it right now.
Do I have time to tell a short little gardening episode?
Absolutely, Fiddler. After all, you're 50% owner.
I like to go to a very famous gardening store in downtown Peoria, Kelly Seeds. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a wonderful store. And I bought some heirloom tomato plants and planted a few of them out in my garden. And out behind my shed in the backyard, I have a couple of cold frames, which I don't use in the warm growing season. And I thought, I'll plant a couple of these tomato plants back here. One was an Amish paste, and the other one was a red Brandywine, both heirlooms. And those suckers took off growing. I have like the 4-foot cages. They grew out of that, and I thought, well, I want to see how big these things will grow. So I made a wooden frame around them, 8 foot tall, 8 foot long pieces of lumber. They grew out of that, probably 9.5 feet tall. The Amish paste tomato, I think I got 2 tiny little tomatoes off of it. In the Brandywine, maybe 4 or 5.
Huh.
And I asked John Fulton, our extension advisor here, what's up with this, John? You know, I had Jack and the Beanstalk going on with tomato plants in my backyard. And he said the heirlooms can really react in strange ways if you have a lot of nitrogen.
I was going to say you had too much nitrogen. Nitrogen is the component in fertilizers that promotes growth of the leaf,
plant, but not the fruit.
Exactly.
So, you know, you have to be careful. You have to do a little reading to see how to fertilize your. I believe in the value of, like I said, I'm a little bit of a lazy gardener, so I don't do a lot of fertilizing, and I don't do a lot of watering, so I think my plants go deep, the roots go deep.
Yeah.
We get a fair amount. You know, we have some years that are worse than others or better than others, but I think a lot of times you do your watering and you water a little bit. And so it's the top inch of the soil that gets wet. So where are the roots going to go? They're going to stay right there. So, you know, if you're going to water your garden, you need to water deep, and not quite so frequently. But I just usually let the heavens take care of the watering.
And as I do as well, unless we get into a real severe drought situation.
We live on property with a well, and we've had to dig a new well. So I'm a little guarding of my water. I want it in the house. I guess the plants are on their own.
I suppose that's my situation as well. We have our own well.
Now, Carol, do you have a personal favorite as far as flowers are concerned?
Oh, gosh, so many. I love the prairie plant Baptisia, which is a cobalt blue. I mean, there's a lot of varieties. There are other colors, but it's a cobalt blue, and it's a perennial, so it's very short-lived. Sure. So you don't get a lot of bloom, but I just really like that, the color on that plant, and the fact that it's a prairie plant. I'm particularly fond of the prairie plants. They're designed by nature to live and thrive right here.
Exactly.
They like our soil, they like our weather conditions, and they do very well here. You don't have to do a lot with them. You can't move them very well. Most of them sink a really deep taproot, which makes them hard to transplant, so you need to, but they'll grow from seed too, and you can get plants.
You know, you mentioned the locale of the plants, you know, those were meant to grow here. I guess I'm a little cognizant of that fact. If I order seed, one of my favorite seed companies is Territorial Seed, and I think it's in either Washington or Oregon, but I'm a little skeptical of their seed.
What zone they're...
Because they're in a total different zone and different soil than we have here. So, that's a factor as well.
Yeah, it is a factor.
Now, you're starting to salivate a little bit about getting started. We've had this unusually warm weather. It's just been incredible. You know, those of us that complain, nobody complained about this last winter. Of course, we're not done yet. We have to go into March. But nonetheless, which brings me, March 11th. That's the date. Well, I want to be sure that we cover this. That will be at the Myers-Evans Student Center, which is also known as the dining hall for our kids. By the way, we just do a great job feeding these kids on Lincoln College campus. My grandson went there several years ago, and I put him on campus and lived in the dorms and all that. And so I said to him one day, "Jerry, how's the food?" "Oh, it's okay." And he went away to Western Illinois over to Macomb. And he
realized how good it was.
I said, "Jerry, how was the food?" He says, "Boy, we had it a lot better."
The registration, the gates open, I think, at 8:30, registration, and the first program is at 9. And 8 to 8:45 is registration. First program's at 9. The keynote speaker, which we haven't mentioned at all, is Deanna Crouchy. She's a master gardener and master naturalist from I think McLean County, and she's going to talk on how to create a hummingbird haven. So that should be very interesting too. So
now, do you have in advance sign up so far?
Yes. There are brochures out and about. You might find them. You find a flyer,
cheaper,
maybe.
A couple of bucks
it's
cheaper.
It's a couple bucks cheaper. You can also stop off at the extension office over on Postville to pick up a brochure. You can go online, and the website is Extension Illinois spelled out .edu/LNS, and I think that's on the brochure. So if you see one of these big yellow flyers, or you can call the extension office, and that phone number is 217-732-8289, and they can get you signed up.
You mentioned John Fulton. We're about ready to close up here this morning. What an asset he is to those folks who need his services here in Logan County.
Amen.
Well,
Yes,
he covers 3 counties now, with the budget requirements and all that. They've stretched him pretty thin. But my goodness, and John's kind enough to come up and visit with us, and we'll be having him this spring again. But a cornucopia of knowledge. And a gentleman besides.
Yes,
he's a good old farm boy.
Oh, he sure is.
Well, I have a list on my kitchen table that says things to do before you can plant.
Oh, okay.
So if the weather stays nice like this, there's lots of things to do in your garden that doesn't involve, because I think we'll have a couple more really cold spells.
Yeah.
Actually, this warm weather, I always plant my garlic bulbs in fall. My garlic's already up.
Is it?
Yeah.
I had last fall when we had that cold and warm, my immature lilac bush, nice buds on it, and I'm sure that they were frosted, and so I'll be curious to see what it does this spring. Gardening is never predictable.
Oh no.
And it's kind of exciting in its unpredictability. So this program, I hope, will bring in people who really want to learn just a little bit more about gardening.
Sure.
And
Carol Mills, our guest this morning for Viewpoint. We appreciate your sharing your expertise and your enthusiasm. March the 11th would be a day to mark on your calendar. You don't have to sign up in advance, but you can get in touch with them through the Logan County Extension Office. I have a quote that pertains to gardening. Fiddler, you'll know this fella. Cicero was his name. That was the original Cicero, 106 BC. Think of that. That's kind of profound. If you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. 106 BC, gentleman made that
Pretty
comment.
profound.
Thank you, Dan Tackett, for being with us.
Thank you.